Finish him. We're about to take it back.
Okay.
Woo, Talking Loud podcast. It's always Diesel Dog. And guys, we got a banger for you guys today because I know a lot of you guys are growing organically and you're doing it at home. Some guys are doing it indoors, some of you guys are doing it outdoors. But to break it all down, I got a great guest with us today who is going to help me out. So what's up, man, Brandon? How's it going, brother?
What's going on? How are you doing?
Man, I'm good, man. Super happy to have you on, guys. We have Brandon Rust on the show, Bokashi Earthworks owner. He's a really great, well-versed guy when it comes to the organics, and a lot of you guys have dropped questions already. So, like I said, it's a live Q&A. If you guys got any questions, drop them down below. But before we do any of that, man, Brandon, just tell me what's been going on, man. How you going, man? Just what's going on, bro?
Yeah, I guess let me start off by introducing myself. My name's Brandon Rust. I'm the owner of Bokashi Earthworks. I've also been cultivating cannabis for about 23 years now. I started back in 2001 with a bunch of OGs, brought me into the game. I worked with them for a couple of years, and I've just kind of been doing it for a while. I got out to Oklahoma, got into the legal market. I've been working as an agricultural consultant out here. I work with a lot of different people, and we work, doing data-driven cultivation and with a lot of really wonderful products that are kind of advancements in fertilizer technology. So
I got you, man. And like you said, you've been gardening for such a long time. And guys, we're going to get into a lot of that. And I think Brandon is the perfect person to have on just to break down a lot of different things organic, because like he's been doing it for such a long time. And I'm really going to help him pick his brain and find out, what we can do on a small scale indoors. And I think that's really important. But before we actually get into any of that stuff, I just want to shout out everyone tuned in right now. Ask you guys to please do hit that like button, show some love. It really helps, YouTube push out the videos a little bit more. And, we're not monetized either. So you guys, if you guys want to support, you guys can join up with the ICANN VIP Bean Club. Link is in the description below. We got some fire genetics going out to all VIPs this month. Our packages have already gone out and people are looking like, it's mailbox is going to be burning down. So you guys definitely join up. But, Brandon, let's just take it back just a little bit, because I wanted to ask you, how did you actually get into gardening? You've been gardening for 20 years now, you said, and that's such a long time. And, you said you started off with some of the OGs. So tell us a little bit about, how you first started out.
Well, I ran hydroponic systems for 11 years before I got into soil systems, and then I ran soil with fertigation salts before I attempted to go completely, in a more organic way.
Okay.
I've learned so much over the course, but we were running 2-gallon ebb and flow buckets, 55-gallon res. We'd have 36 buckets under 4 thouies checkerboard with CMH and metal halide. We were running 3-part General Hydro with a couple of additives, just standard fucking shit for back in the day,
Yeah. I got you, man. But like when you first start off, like I'm sure that things have changed a lot, since then versus now, because a lot of people who I had on the show, like some of the OGs, who've been gardening for quite some time, pioneers, they didn't have the internet and stuff like that. So back then, was it like a lot of trial and error, or how did you like find your feet? Because I'm sure it was a little bit different for you.
It was different. Well, I had guys that had already been doing it. I had OGs, I had guys that were 11, 12 years older than me that had already been cultivating indoors for 10 years, so they went through lots of trial and error and stuff like that, but they had their systems pretty dialed in when I came on board.
Yeah.
And so when I came under their wing, I was, instructed on, you know, the protocols, on the proper procedures,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's what I learned. And I learned procedure. I didn't learn about nutrient dynamics. I learned procedure. And that's what a lot of people do, I think, in the industry, is they learn procedure and they get those procedures well. And as long as they don't deviate from those procedures,
Yeah.
then they can usually, it's kind of like baking a cake. You know, if you have a good recipe and you take the proper procedures, you usually come out with the same thing, given you have the same recipe. So that's what I did for a really, really long time. When I eventually switched, the reason was I can't remember exactly when it was or why it was, but I think it had something to do with, I think I had a room failure where like a fucking pump failed and the whole fucking thing fucking, you know, went to shit. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do soil. Soil's more forgiving. At least, you know, if my fucking, you know, if my soil gets dry, my plants aren't going to fucking die,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, if you're growing in rock wool in fucking, hydroton, you know, the
Food, right?
volcanic rock media. Yeah. That's what we were using back then. So I switched over and I was still using fertigation salts. And then around 2014, prices of weed started to drop, dude. And it was just, things started to really change, you know? And so, I had to figure out how to reduce my overhead, and I was fucking buying like 11 things. I think it was from like House and Garden. I had a B, I had all these root accelerator and power booster and enzyme this, and you know what I mean? And I was like, what the fuck, dude? And so I was like, what? And I started reading the labels and stuff. I was like, I think what fucking got me was, you know, there was more information. I've started to really like learn about the plant, the science behind it and everything like that. And I started reading the labels, and I think one of the products that they had was labeled as a like a bloom booster. And I
Okay.
looked at it and it said derived from langbonite. And so I looked up what langbonite is, and langbonite is a rock mineral. It's extremely inexpensive. It costs about $900 a ton,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Wow.
$900 a ton is
Damn.
about the cost of how much this stuff costs.
Yeah.
Now, they were putting us like maybe a teaspoon in a bottle of water and selling it for like $60 a liter. You know, and I was buying that, and so I
Wow.
was, you know, it was like
That's expensive. Yeah. That'll add up.
it was just stuff like that. When I realized that a lot of the stuff that they were sourcing, or a lot of the products that they're using their products, were things that I could purchase really, really inexpensively. I just needed to figure out how to use the raw ingredient. And so what I started to do is I started to find all those raw ingredients, incorporate those into soil blends.
Okay.
And so I started blending and mixing soils, and I tried different blends. Like, you know, I tried Coots mix, I think at one point, and I think at one point I tried Subcools mix, and I tried some mixes from like different universities, and I tried little one part cocoa, one part peat, one part aeration mixes, and you know, I just played around with it for a while and then you know, when I got into the commercial side, the legal market, that's when I really started getting in more heavily into the agronomy. Because before I was in the legal market, I started doing soil testing, and I started playing around with nutrient values and kind of looking at crop nutrition for cannabis. But I really took off when I got into, you know, into the commercial side, because
I got you.
then I, you know, using that data to be able to understand soil management and crop management and what needs to be in that system at what time, what needs to be applied and what quantities. Those all became really, really important factors for reducing costs, because I wasn't going and buying anything but raw ingredients.
Interesting.
And then I could manufacture my own microbial products for like nutrient cycling, liberating phosphorus, aiding with, you know, micronutrient bioavailability in soils.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's all the things that I found were the most cost effective and, you know, had the best efficacy is,
Yeah.
what I built my company off of, like the
Gotcha.
multifunctional probiotic, things like the calcium silica,
Yeah.
because, there's stuff like calcium, dude. Calcium silica is like, I was originally using it just to stabilize pH in soils. And after every run, I would do a top dress to, reset my soil, bring it
Yeah.
back up to nutritional sufficiency, make sure everything's balanced. And that is one of the things that I used. I used that calcium silica instead of using like a high calcium ag lime. And I found that instead of using it just all at once to reset, I just use it periodically through my grow cycle, and it has great effect because it's 51% silica. It also has magnesium and iron. It's
Yeah.
44% calcium, so it's a great calcium source.
I got you.
That brings in some other available nutrition.
Yeah.
And just little tips and stuff like that I picked up along the way, doing more of the agronomy type stuff and looking at individual elements and what those elements are comprised of. Because
Yeah.
this calcium silica is a mineral. It's called wollastonite, and this mineral is what it just happens to be comprised of like all these things plants love. But most people have never heard of it. Most people don't. It's not something that most people would hear about unless you're maybe an agronomist.
Yeah. But you touched on a lot of
So,
interesting things there, man. And just hearing your like evolution, where you started off from in terms of like your grow style. A lot of people back in the day wanted to grow like DWC setups, hydro, synthetics. They just want a really clean approach to gardening, clean so to speak. And what I found is that what I've heard you say rather is that you've just found that was a little bit expensive doing that. Just a lot of bottles, a lot of different things you had to get, and you were trying to cut some of those costs and figure out what's the most efficient and effective way that I can give the plant what it needs. And I think that's what a lot of home growers are looking for nowadays. They're looking for, where can I incorporate organics into my current grow, and how can I do that? So just to ask you before we even jump into the full organic conversation, have you noticed any difference in your final product when you were running the synthetics versus the organics?
organics are better.
Okay.
Carbon dynamics
Interesting.
play a huge part in the functionality and the genetic potentials of plants, because
Yeah.
they feed the microbiome, and just like plants produce secondary metabolites and chemical compounds that we enjoy, the microbes that proliferate in the biosphere, they do the same thing. And some of those are hormones that the plants can utilize for, or signaling compounds that they can utilize for that regulate
Interesting.
the genetic response in a plant. It there's just a bunch of different crazy things that happen, dude. Like,
So when
when
you're
you're talking,
smoking it, did it taste better? Because I think that's probably what everyone wants to know.
yeah, you typically see higher terpene content for sure.
Oh shit,
Um,
man! I like that.
there's
That's
a
all
bunch
I
of
want
different types of dynamics though that like interplay. But
to
here's the
create
thing
that.
too.
Yeah.
It's not. I do what I do not because it's like I think organics is better or this and this. It's more efficient, right?
I
And this
got
is
you.
how. So if we're to look at the way that synthetic fertilizers are produced, one, they take a massive amount of energy and a massive amount of resource. And then the final product itself, let's take diammonium phosphate, right?
Okay.
Or let's say calcium nitrate. Either one of those takes a lot of energy and resource to manufacture, and both of them have really low use efficiency. Only about maybe 15% of that product will actually be observed by the plant. The rest is just always wasted. And you see that because they call it drain to waste for a reason, because you're wasting. The majority of what you're doing is you're wasting.
So true.
And so the thing is, we need to increase our efficiencies when it comes to the resource management aspect. and then also to the production and resources. How much energy does it create in the production of these things? And so that's what's really important, right? So we have different technologies that are better than some of the old technologies that are still in use today, like the Haber-Bosch process to manufacture ammonium from atmospheric nitrogen.
Yeah.
Now, or there's just different new technologies that are based off of organic chemistry that are more efficient when it comes to energy and resource management, and then also the use efficiency. Instead of having a 15% use efficiency, these almost have 100%.
Yeah.
We're looking at a 96% use efficiency, because a lot of times when we're addressing fertilizers and we're trying to address soil holistically, we need to be addressing carbon. And so we have carbon-based fertilizer technology that actually molecular chelates and attaches all of the nutrient ions to carbon and allows it for passive transport, which saves on energy mechanics. It feeds the microbiome of the soil. It aids in building up the soil carbon levels. Instead of acidifying soil, it actually builds up soil carbon levels. It aids with water retention. It aids in more than just fertilization of soil or adding nutrients into soils. It's a biostimulant that also works multifunctionally to build new soils through all of these different avenues, through stimulating the microbiome, through increased soil structure, through energy mechanics for better plant growth, which means better penetration of roots, which means there's all these different ways that soil is improved structurally and chemically.
True. Yeah, I got you. And bigger roots, bigger fruits. And I think that's what it all comes down to, man. And I think you're really breaking it down, really interesting for a lot of people tuned in right now. I'm already seeing some great questions coming in. And I had a few from the ICANN VIP Bean Club fam. So if you guys want to join up and, sort of get some of these questions onto the show, then definitely join up, man. Now, what I did want to ask, because a lot of growers, like I mentioned, are trying to, at least incorporate organics into their home grow. And one of the ICANN VIP Bean Club homies, shout out to Sim 10, and he's been a VIP for quite some time. He's asking, how do you fix a nutrient imbalance when you're growing all organic? Because he has a nitrogen issue, and he tried giving the plants more by top dressing, but ended up burning them. So how do you go about it? Because like ratios are a little bit more, less bottle, on the back of a bottle it says, 10 milliliters per gallon of water or whatever. But when you're going organic, there's less of that uncertainty. So how do you go about that?
Nitrogen dynamics are really complicated to begin with, because if you look at how nitrogen operates, 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen, and that's where the majority of the nitrogen actually comes from, except it is fixed through metabolic processes in the soil by microorganisms. That's one way that it's converted. It's also converted through lightning into a usable form, which is really interesting. And then we also have forms where we create it, or you could get nitrogen from meals, things like blood meal, soybean meal, things like karanja, things like alfalfa meal. They all have amounts of nitrogen. So depending on the plant and then the size of the plant, because if you're looking at nitrogen, like no matter what, you're going to lose probably about 40% of that nitrogen, no matter what. Like no matter what, it doesn't matter what form. There's going to be a turnover, because it's not only fixed atmospherically, but once it's in the soil, it's used for energy and for metabolic processes, right? Because bacteria, so whether it's a fungi, a bacteria, they all need that. Plants too, they need nitrogen to build proteins, to build RNA and DNA. So they all need nitrogen for those same things. So there's a huge turnover.
Gotcha.
And some of it's immobilized by microbes, and there's competition between plants and microbes in soil systems. There's, and then also there's different organic forms, like meals, like blood meal could have 14 to 16% nitrogen, while soybean meal only has half of that. And alfalfa might only have 3%. So
Yeah.
you have to look at the percent, and then, how much should you be using? I do it all based off of data. So I have soil analytics. All the people that I work
Gotcha.
with, like in a commercial setting or in an agricultural setting, they send off their soil samples to a lab, and I look at the data and I say,
Okay.
and I can determine off of that data how much of what in what quantity needs to be added. And then depending on the phase of growth, I
Yeah.
can determine that, that same thing, because different phases of growth require different nutrient requirements as well.
Yeah.
Right. So we've already built out these, maps, these nutrient maps for cannabis, or for tomatoes, or for cucumbers, or,
Yeah.
there's all the information is already there. So we're just basically following um, a set of guidelines.
I got you.
Now, my guidelines for what I'm doing, I've done most of the work on myself, because a lot of those uh, hadn't been studied in university for obvious reasons, the legal, uh, you know, legality of hemp.
Yeah, that's interesting though, and that's something that I think a lot of people, may overlook. The fact that just having a simple soil test can really help you understand what's going on in there. Because a lot of people also want to reuse their soil and, don't want to toss it out. And I fully agree with that. But you want to figure out what's in there, how you want to amend it. Because a lot of, growing organically does come down to amending, re-amending, and trying to figure out how you can achieve that perfect balance. And balance is something that I think a lot of growers really have issues with when they're growing at home. And a myth that, or not really a myth, but more something that a lot of people, constantly regurgitate and say is that you cannot grow organically on smaller scale. So do you what size pot is ideal, if you're growing organically? And I'm not speaking like, just about living soils, but we
Yeah.
know living soils need a bigger bed. But like if you're growing organically, is there like an ideal pot size that a lot of the home growers should aim for?
So I have plants right now that are flowering out, and they're going to flower out real strong and produce real nice, chunky buds. And I'm talking, some of these things are kind of ridiculous. And they're not even in a gallon pot. They're in they're in like a 3 liter pot.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
about
Yeah.
a 5 by 5,
Jeez,
maybe
bro.
maybe about 8 inches deep. They're
That's
not big
dope.
pots, they're just
Yeah.
testers, but you can do it. You just need to have if you're going to do something like that, you should have a soil that's really nutrient rich and balanced. And then, but
Got you.
I have the humate fertilizer too, though. I don't know if you've seen this stuff on my website, but the humate fertilizer is a fulvic, it's a carbon-based fertilizer. So it it acts as a biostimulant, and all of the nutrients are attached to carbon. So it's very, very efficient, and you only need to use a little bit. So you can, water just, a couple of times a month
Yeah.
with that, and really not have, and grow in smaller pots. And I do it all the time, just because I run testers, and I'll test out seeds, and I'll just run a seed. I won't top it. I'll just, plant it in one of those little 3 liter pots
Yeah.
and run it.
I got you. I think
We've
I
got
actually got it up on screen right now. So you guys should definitely check out his Instagram, his website. Everything is on there. And you guys can learn a lot when it comes to, what you guys need when it comes to growing organically. But yeah, you broke that down really, really interesting. I think I actually
It's
saw
not just for organics either. So the cool thing about, like, especially the humate fertilizer, right?
big
What's
facts.
special about the humate is that if you are using like a salt base or a synthetic, it can increase the efficiency of that. So because it stops the precipitation reactions, and also that fulvic acid will bind with those
Yeah.
ions, with those mineral ions, so they don't react with each other. Because a lot of times what's happening is you've got all these nutrient ions. Some of them are positively charged, some of them are negatively charged, and then interact with each other, and they'll bond together, and the plant won't have access to either of them when that happens. This really, particularly, that happens a lot with phosphorus. It'll bind with calcium and magnesium and higher pHs, and it'll bind with copper, zinc, aluminum, iron at lower, and copper and lower pHs. And so
Yeah.
Using the humate can stop those precipitation reactions from happening.
Interesting.
However, because it increases the use efficiency, you have to decrease the amount of what you use. So if you were, using, 20 milliliters per gallon of like something, you'd have to cut it all the way down to like 5
Yeah.
if you were
Interesting.
using the humates. And then you couldn't use the full strength humate either. You'd have to cut that by about 70%.
Yeah. I got you. So I think that just based on what I'm hearing, there are a lot of benefits, even if you're not growing organically. So you guys should definitely, just educate yourselves a little bit, so you guys can understand how all these things work and how the processes interact with each other. And but what you mentioned about the small pots, I was actually flowering in some really small pots, and I found that you can grow organically and you can do things, in an organic sense, and you don't have to worry about the a lot of the issues that you may think you may face, because I actually had some pretty nice flowers from it. And like you mentioned, small pots, fat chunky flowers, it may not be ideal. I'm pretty sure the roots will root down and all that, but I was able to have some blue mat system set up so that way it was constantly moist and I didn't have to worry about watering. I think that's the biggest plus. So all that said, I'm just really understanding what you're saying, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. And another question I did want to ask is, do synthetics, like if you're using synthetics, because you mentioned that you can incorporate some of these things, does that affect the microbial life negatively in like your organic soil? If I'm a diehard organic guy and I got my living bed and everything, and I were to use some synthetics, would that negatively affect things?
No, not typically. The whole thing is when you're looking at when you're so what it does, the way that it works chemically is it starts binding stuff up. So if you were to use like diammonium or monoammonium phosphate, for instance, when those things are liberated in water, that phosphate is highly, highly active, right? And it'll bind with other positively charged molecules because it itself is negatively charged. And so what you're doing is you're tying up elements in the soil that could be used for the biology that is proliferating in that soil. Like they could be, they can have, if they don't have access to that phosphate, or if they don't have access to the iron or the zinc or the manganese or the nitrogen or any of the things that they need because of some chemical reaction is not allowing for it to be available to those organisms, then they could suffer in that regard. But typically that's not the case. And typically the amount of, like nutrient that you would put into a soil system,
Yeah.
unless you're doing it constantly, it's not going to have just a detrimental impact. Like overall, like,
Yeah.
if you go and if like someone was to go and have a soil bed and they started, watering, once or twice a month with Athena or something like that,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see elevated nutrient levels maybe after a little while, depending on,
For
how
sure.
much the plant is eating up.
Yeah.
But and then eventually things will go out of balance, and they will, it'll work for a little while, but what happens is imbalances happen.
For sure. Yeah.
And when you the problem is when imbalances happen, when the plant is trying to uptake things with water, it's not getting access to what it needs. Like if you've got too much sodium, it'll lock out calcium and magnesium and potassium.
Yeah.
Or if you have too much magnesium,
True.
right, it'll lock out calcium.
Yeah.
And or if there's all these different nutrient interactions that are constantly
Constant. Yeah.
happening. And so and that happens regardless of whether you're in synthetics or in an organic system. But when you have access to carbon and things like fulvic acid groups and microbes that produce siderophores, they can help keep those elements in an available form for the plant. So there's
Yeah.
just a lot of different dynamics that are
A lot.
constantly happening, dude, like
So
in
many,
these
bro.
systems.
Yeah, when you like break it down like how you are right now, it's like wow, it's really just so much, man. And I think that you're doing a great job of breaking it down. I gotta ask everyone, please do hit that like button. We got over 230 people tuned in. We need to have over 230 likes. Like, what's going on, man? You guys gotta smash that like. But I got another question which came in from one of my homies, man. This one came in from Brandon Clark, another ICANN VIP Bean Club homie, and he was saying, with all these nutrients on the market today, all these products, all these options that you guys can get, right? What is the simplest way that you can just make your girls fat in all the right places? And is there anything that should be cut out in late
Yeah.
flower besides nitrogen? Because we kind of spoke about cutting out nitrogen already.
Yeah. So, I've developed, I think, the most cost-effective protocol, because regardless of what soil you're starting with, my standard nutrient feeding program, you only feed 6 times through a whole entire cycle. So all the way from
Damn.
veg to the very end of flower. That's it.
Okay.
You only feed a total of 6 times. So twice a month, assuming that this is a 3-month cycle where you have, let's say, 4 weeks of veg and then 8 weeks of flower,
Yeah.
right? If you're doing less veg time, only 2 weeks of veg, or even less than that, then you're not even doing 6 times. You might only be doing 4 feedings,
Wow.
right? So why? And then also you don't have to pH anything. So you just add, and the way the program works is it's really easy, right? If you've got a super soil or something that's loaded up, you can actually cut the feeding program in half. So it's very, very cost effective. The way it works is there's 3 different products. There's actually a total of 3 different humates, and there's a total of 5 products. But we have a high nitrogen humate, right? And this is for veg. And so when you transplant your clone and you're getting ready, you use this as like a starter fertilizer. And then you don't use this any other times in veg unless you're going to veg 4 weeks. So 2 weeks after you use this, you can use it again. So you're
Oh,
only using
okay.
this maybe twice a month, right? So once when you first transplant your clone, and then 2 weeks after.
Yeah, I got
And
you.
then that's it, right? And you use and when you do that, you use the calcium silica, which is your calcium, your silica. It's got a little bit of magnesium and some iron in there.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to flower and you flip your light, you use the complex humate, and it just has less nitrogen and it's got a little bit more phosphorus in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So it's setting the plant up for that transition, when the plant starts to bolt, when it starts to grow really rapidly after you flip it. And the same thing, you'll use this probably once, maybe twice, and then you'll use it with that product right there. And then in late flower, you have a high potassium humate.
Got
So
you.
it's like a complete program, but it's really easy. It's just calcium, silica, and the humate. And then if you want to, you can add in the microbes too, like
Yeah.
rotating it. But
Yeah.
it's easy, dude. It's super cost effective. I
That's what's
think
up.
I think that most people usually that have like a 5x5 tent, a liter of each of those products will last them about 3 full runs.
Damn, that's proper, bro. That is
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah. So it's like you'll spend probably like 100, maybe 120 something bucks on the website if you get the 3 humates, the calcium silica, and the microbe plus, and that's enough for a home grower to last for a while, dude. Like
Yeah.
me, because I have my home grow too, and I have my 2 little veg tents, which are just two by 2s, and then I have my 14 by 14 like shed where I have my 2 3x3 beds and my LED lights, and I've only gone through like half of a liter. So for that size, I'm only going through like a half a liter of each grow. So it'll last me 2 full runs.
Okay.
One of
Damn, bro.
my bottles.
That's
Yeah.
proper. So, guys, definitely check out his Instagram. Check out the website. Like I said, everything is on there. You guys can see. I know a lot of you guys are on Instagram,
Bro,
so just hit that link.
my house plants are so banging, bro. I used to fucking kill all of my house plants. Okay, so here's the story. So I was doing the agronomy and I was doing a lot of top dressing before, and that's how I would mainly feed my plants, was just
Okay.
top dressing. But I met
Yeah.
Dr. George, who developed the humate fertilizer, and he was a NASA scientist, and so he owns NASA Agricultural Technologies, and he developed the science, the
Shit,
chemistry,
bro.
he engineered the technology for this for the humate fertilizer.
Yeah.
And so I've been going out to Chicago back and forth for a couple of years now, and we've been building a business plan together. He's been telling me all about, like, educating me on like how the manufacturing is done, how
Yeah.
it all works and functions. And so it's crazy. And that was kind of game changer, because the fertilizer that he created is so efficient that, like, I'm often finding it to where, like, I don't even have to like, I don't even have to use it very often. Like, I've only done it twice my whole cycle, right? So I'm only
Yeah.
at like 25% of the recommended dose right now, because I mean, I've got really good, nice, healthy, fresh soil that I started off with, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to overdo it.
Got you.
But it just works really efficient. And dude, my house plants before, dude, I was like, I couldn't really figure out what to give my houseplants. I would kind of try to top dress them and stuff, but houseplants are different, dude.
They are, yeah,
And
facts.
now, dude, now all I do is I give them the humate like once every 2 months, dude.
Yeah.
And dude, my houseplants are banging, bro. Dude, I keep buying houseplants because my houseplants look so good. You know what I mean? I have these monsteras, bro, and the leaves are, dude, their leaves are fucking huge. I can't show you on the screen like how big they are.
Dude, Monsteras
They're
go for a
huge,
grip
bro.
as well, bro. Monsteras ain't cheap.
Dude, I
Like,
know. And I started going to like the nurseries because all my plants are fucking bang, all my house plants. So I got Christmas cactuses, I have African desert roses, I've got monsteras,
oh, yeah.
I've got a bunch of succulents. I've just got a bunch of tropical plants. I don't even know the name of all of them, right?
I love
And
that, bro.
and so and that's what I started doing. I just started doing that Inhumate, bro. I do 30 milliliters per
Yeah.
gallon of water, and I just water those things with it like once every other month, bro. And it's just so easy. And so it's like all my plants are getting huge, and so I always go to the store and I buy new ones, dude. And it's crazy because I'll go spend like $125 on a plant and shit. You know what I mean?
True. And yeah, plants
Because
ain't cheap.
some of those ones are like expensive, where you'll get like the variegated versions. Because if you propagate those, you could fucking list them on like Facebook Marketplace and shit. And like,
Yeah, big
so
facts. Big
so
facts, bro.
I'm like collecting rare plants now.
I like that, man. That's big respect, though. That's dope.
I'm investing in rare plants.
I like that, man. You got to invest in different types of plant. You got to
I'm
diversify your
diversifying,
portfolio.
dude.
I like that.
Exactly. It fits right within everything I'm doing. And if
Yeah.
I can, I'll be taking like cuts and shit, eventually off of these like variegated albo monsteras and like some of the other variegated plant species that I have that are popular.
Yeah, man, I'm enjoying this conversation so much, bro. This is awesome, man. And I'm seeing a lot of you guys in the chat are as well. So let's run up those likes. We got almost 300 people tuning in. I'm seeing High Times T actually says we need a VIP Bean Club group chat so we can share pics from our fire. Yeah, dude, that's a great idea. I'm gonna have to hook you guys up. So guys, if you want some of that fire, join up, man. We love sharing pics of flower.
Yeah,
But
and you know what's cool too is I love seeing people share their gardens when they're using our products, because I always share that on our stories, dude. And because people love seeing, dude, there's some like I see some people just crushing, dude. So
amazing grows,
it's
bro.
great.
Like, it's crazy, man. And like some people are like, yo, this is my first, my second, third grow. And I'm like, man, you look like you've been crushing it for like a million years, bro. Like, keep on crushing, man. So shout out to everyone who's growing that fire, brother. But I think this is a perfect time, just to find out more about you, dude, and what type of fire you like to grow, smoke, toke on, and how you like to enjoy it, man. This is the part I like to call the Know Your Bud segment, because everyone on the show that comes onto the show, I like to say is my bud. And I like to find out what you do with your bud. buds. So I'm just going to ask you a couple random questions, no right or wrong answers, almost like multiple choice. Back when you were in school, you just got to pick one and tell me which one you prefer and why, and that's it.
Let's do it.
All righty, man. Okay, this one I think is a nice way to start things off, right? Because I think I know that you're already a real organic guy. But when it comes to like popping your beans, which one do you prefer? If you had a choice between popping some autos and popping some photos, you're gonna pop the autos or the photos?
Ooh. See, that's a trick question, right? Because that's circumstantial. If it's
Good point.
early season, I'm going with fem autos because I can get a little crop in before I put out my photos. You know what I mean? Especially if it's for outdoor.
Yeah. Good point.
Again, I like fem autos. They're great because you can pop those motherfuckers in with other stuff and have some some quick smoke. But
Yeah.
honestly, I prefer photos. I prefer photos because I like to hold on to genetics and I like to covet things that are special.
Yeah, I like that, man. I'm the same freaking way, man. I've been looking for some keepers, man, some keeper cuttings that I could just keep running, and I'm happy with those, and it's like an elusive fucking unicorn, bro. I've been searching, but I can't seem to find it yet. But I'm gonna keep looking, bro. I promise you, I'm gonna keep looking. But the next question, though, this is also sort of controversial one. So when you go to grab something, you're gonna go and smoke your flower. You just harvest it and everything's dried and cured and you're going to smoke it. You're going to roll a joint or you're going to hit it in the bong. Ooh. I like that. I like that. No need to even answer that one. We got the answer right next to us, guys. So we're going to move on. Okay, the next one, though. Edibles or vapes?
Edibles all day long.
Ooh.
Oh, not all day long. All night long, I should say.
My man is gonna be eating edibles all day, and we're gonna find him on the couch tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah, so I do really enjoy edibles, but those are a nighttime thing for me. I like the smoke, the kind of more uplifting varieties. For the daytime, I got a lot to do. I usually try to be on top of things and try to be,
Got you.
all there mentally. So
Yeah, I got you.
yeah, edibles at night though, because I do sometimes have a hard time turning it all off.
That's interesting, man. A lot of people actually come on the show and they did say that though. They said the same thing that you're saying right now. Like they either eat edibles and they feel absolutely nothing, or they feel absolutely nothing, and that's the main reason why they take it to sleep. For sleeping purposes, as a sleeping aid, it helps them to relax. But interesting, man. Now, if you're super stoned, man, you're zorked, like you're watching a movie or something, and you're gonna go into the kitchen and grab a snack because those munchies just start to kick in. What are you gonna grab? You're gonna grab something salty or something sweet?
Oh, it just depends, man. I got a sweet tooth. Honestly, it's bad. I try my hardest because I know how bad sugar is. But I do like myself a little like ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
Maybe like a cream soda.
I got you. I like that, man. You're different, bro. You're real different when it comes to it. I like myself a little chocolate. I see my homie Chad Westport in the chat right now. He loves cupcakes, man. So I think all of us stoners, we just got a sweet tooth, man. I don't know what it is.
But I really, really like some homemade huevos rancheros.
Okay.
Right out of the garden.
Yeah.
Get everything out of the garden. Go get some eggs from the chickens. The only thing that I don't have, that I can't make myself, are tortillas. You know what I mean? I just can't.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm not. I don't have the capacity or the knowledge to make
Takes a
good
little bit
tortillas.
of that refinement, but once there's a will, there's a way. Yeah, that's what I always like to say. And speaking of that, though, if you can only choose one thing to do, would it be a nightcap or a wake and bake session? Can only pick one.
Wake and bake. Yeah, probably wake and bake.
Ooh,
I'm gonna have to enjoy that. Yeah.
Interesting. A lot of people they'll be productive during the day and then they'll just cap out at the night with one. But I don't hear a lot of people actually say wake and bake. But wake and bake is the best part of the fucking day, bro.
I mean, because it gets me in the zone, especially because like I'll be there, bam, it's like driving to work. I'm like thinking about everything. Okay, it's all going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it helps with that. Helps the introspective. What do I got to get done? What's the most important thing on my list?
Yeah.
You know,
And
it
I
puts
get
me in
like
the
such
zone, dude.
inspiration too. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It puts me in the zone, bro. You hit the nail on that head, bro. It puts me in the zone, man. I like that. Oh shit, man. Okay, this is the last one, dude. So we're sitting down here. You're talking to me right now, right? And someone kicks open that door and they're like, yo, it's 20-year-old Brandon, right? So you're looking at yourself now. And he's like, I'm challenging you to a smoke off. Who's gonna win that smoke off? 20-year-old you or you right now?
No, 28-year-old me is gonna win that hands down. Yeah, for sure.
Even with like the weed getting harder and shit, man, a lot of people say like, "Nah, I'm gonna smoke that kid."
Man, no, that would be a challenge, dude. I mean, I was fucking ruthless. Dude, 28 me, I was partying, bro. You know what I mean? I partied. I partied so hard.
I like
No,
that.
I couldn't out smoke or out drink my 28-year-old self. There's no goddamn way.
Wow, bro, that is
No, I've come a long way. I've mellowed out a lot.
interesting, man. Nowadays, you'll just like hit the bong a couple times and you're good, you know. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of zips right here from my boy, and it's gonna last me, man. That'll probably last me a couple of weeks at least. You know what I mean?
that's proper,
I'll
man. I've
put
seen
this in
so
a
many.
jar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh shit, man! And I've seen so many great comments coming in, man. Like 20-year-old me is gonna die. 20-year-old me may win. 1 ounce a day at 20. Like a lot of people got so many different questions, man. I love this, man. That is awesome. Well, that's
I
annoy a
mean,
bud
and
segment, man.
yeah, and I mean, when I was in high school, I smoked a lot of Mexican weed. You know what I mean?
True.
And I was still doing massive fucking bong rips.
Yeah, that good old brick, man. And back then, like you'd have to roll them even bigger, man. You have to roll fatter cannons because like it's just not as good. So you gotta toke down a whole lot more to get like even on this level. You know what I mean?
It was
Like,
different.
yeah,
I
bro.
remember going on missions just to find dirt weed.
Oh man,
You know
man.
what I
I
mean?
actually was thinking that just the other day. I think I did a post about that, and I was like asking people, where's the weirdest place that you had to find yourself smoking just so that you won't
Mm,
get caught, man? So where's the weirdest place that you found
mm,
yourself? Blazing
weirdest
one out
place, man.
behind some sort of those public toilets or something like that, or
Well,
hidden down in a drain. I don't know.
well, I mean, I've smoked in a lot of different fucking
Up
places,
on a
man.
tree.
I smoked under bridges. Yeah, I've smoked in trees, on tractors, and bathroom stalls.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think what the weirdest place. I don't know what the weirdest. I can't. It's not something that I'd have to really think about it.
Yeah, same. I feel the
But I
same
did.
way.
You know what the strangest thing I ever did on LSD was? I can tell you that. That
Okay,
was
yeah.
I went on the Price is Right.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was
What?
crazy. Yeah, it was. So look, me, my two of my friends, and my ex girlfriend. She was my girlfriend at the time.
Snap.
We drove up to LA. We partied all night long. We probably drank like
Yeah.
between the four of us. We probably drank like 60 beers.
Wow.
Right. We were fucking shit faced hammered. And the next morning we were all hungover. We're like, fuck, we're on our way to the Price is Right. We can't be hungover. Everybody starts drinking water. And Ian's like, well, I got acid. So we're like, yeah, that'll fucking get us there. And so we all and this is my boy, and he has got this dose that it was manufactured in a Swiss lab. It's pharmaceutical grade. The shit it makes you feel great. You can eat on it. Like it doesn't no negative effects, right?
That's that good shit.
And it's so we're tripping, and it takes a long time. When you go to the
Wow.
Price is Right, what happens is you're standing in line for about 4 hours before you actually go into the studio. And I didn't realize at the
Interesting.
time that 4 hours is actually a psychological test that the producers are screening the people, right? And I figured it out because we were fucking tripping, right? And so the contestants that got picked, they were picked off by interactions that were happening during these particular times.
Yeah.
And a good example of this was this whole studio is in case you can't get in there. There's no parking lot. The public can't park in there. It has a fence around it, right? Like we
Okay.
had to be led in through security fencing and all this other stuff, right? But there was a moment when one of the crew members came out and said, "Hey, there's a car parked in the parking lot, and we need whoever owns this car to move it." Now, some dude jumped up and was like, "Oh, screw that car! I'm gonna win a new one!" Right? And I was thinking to myself, "Wait a minute! We all walked in here. Nobody can even park in here because these are studio parking lots for the fucking studio."
Yeah.
Right there, no, the audience actually is like, you can't park in there.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was a fucking test. So there's these little tests that that happen, and then at the very end, you get interviewed by one of the actual production managers individually after
Okay.
going through all these other individual
Wow.
tests. But
Damn.
we're fucking tripping fucking balls when we go in there, and nothing in that fucking studio has changed since the 70s, bro.
Wow.
So it's like you're stepping back into fucking time. And
warp,
plus that, they take away your cell phones. So you have no digital technology on you either. Right. And you walk in there, the set is all the same. All the wallpaper's the same. The only thing that's different is it's Drew Carey instead of Bob Barker.
Yeah.
But it was crazy because they knew we were fucking tripping. And the DJ was playing like Afro Man to us because I got high. And Drew Carey was talking to our group. And he was fucking dancing and talking about smoking weed and factor. And like, he's like, it was fucking, it was I was, like I said, I was fucking tripping balls.
That is
it was
wild
wild.
story. Yeah, that's one of the, I think that's probably up there with one of the wildest stories I think I've ever heard on Know Your Buds, man. Shout out to you for that one, man. And shout out to Rasta, man. He said this is one of the best interviews. I think I agree with that as well. Because this story is wild, says X-Cal. Like, I fully agree. What a trip, man. Now, that is actually pretty crazy. I think I just seen one that I did want to pinpoint too. It was super funny. Grizzly Adam says, removing a ceiling tile and puffing on top of a 12-foot ladder in the ceiling while working. You are the real MVP.
Yep.
I like that, man. Legend. Now, I think that's just, a great way to, help everyone get to know you a little bit more, man. And I think that's the great thing about the Know Your Bud segment. Everyone's got a different answer and everyone's got a different story, man. And thanks for sharing yours, brother. I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
Now, before we actually just close off, dude, I did have a couple more questions when it came to the organics, man. Like I said, you're the perfect guy to get on here, so I wanted to ask a couple of them. My brother Chris McNeese, he actually is asking about cocoa and organics, and I think that's something that a lot of people are growing in, and they want to know, can they incorporate organics into growing in cocoa? So, what would you say to him?
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about cocoa is it's an organic substrate. So it in itself is an inert media. Therefore, it's considered kind of a hydroponic. But also, you can use cocoa to build, organic soils. There's companies that use a cocoa instead of peat. And it also can house microbes. It does hold on to a small amount of nutrients, not like soil does, but our products can be used in cocoa as well, except it's a little bit different, right? Because you're not going to have to feed as much with our products, and you're not going to want runoff and stuff like that because you're not going to have precipitation reactions. So the feeds, we haven't developed a fully comprehensive feed schedule yet for the cocoa. I'm actually going to be starting some experiments, but I've seen other people do it just on their own. They're like, oh, yep, I'm doing this. I'm running this in cocoa. I work with a commercial farm who's implemented our products, and what they were able to do was decrease all of their inputs by about 50%. And so they're still using, I think their salt-based program, but they were running like, twice as much before they started incorporating some of the things into their program. So the whole thing is, as long as a company is reducing their costs and overhead and they're increasing their use efficiency, it's a win-win. Even if they're not fully organic, at least our company can help other companies become more efficient, more cost effective.
Yeah, I think
and less wasteful.
super important. That is super important, man. I was just about to say sustainability, but not wasting is pretty much the same thing. So you really don't want to be wasting anything, man. Just think about it that way. And when you do waste, it's not only your pocket that's bleeding out that cash, but where's the waste going? There's runoff, and that's going somewhere, polluting the environment. None of it is good. None of it's good.
If you're doing cocoa and you're doing something like our humates and stuff, I would recommend that you reuse that cocoa too. You could maybe do a little 10% little flush at the end of your run, or you might not even need to if you're doing a flush at the end of your run. But most, you could be reusing that media. I know so many people that throw that stuff out, and it's not necessary.
Yeah. So if you were to reuse it, like, or how do you even start off, to build that good cocoa core for, the life of the plant? Can you use some of these products as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, dope. For the
Yep.
whole life of the plant too, and it will probably pretty much be like what you mentioned before with like 6 feeding sort of thing. Unless you're vegging for a little bit less, it could be less. And
Yeah.
for longer, it could be more.
So I've seen different uses. I've seen a cocoa grower do, and because like my recommended feed rate is 30 milliliters per gallon, and you're feeding once every other week, right?
Got you.
And instead of doing 30 milliliters, what he was doing was like 2 milliliters per gallon, but he was feeding every day. But he
Yeah.
was dropping the dose rate to like 2 milliliters and doing it more consistently,
Okay.
as opposed to doing, less
Yeah.
frequent. So it just depends, again, there's multiple ways to approach it. Ours are all suggestions that are based off of what we typically see in most soils that people buy that are on the market.
Yeah. No, I think that is well said. And, you're just answering these questions so, succinctly for a lot of people like me. I'm a simple guy and I need things to be broken down in a simple way for me to understand. So, I really appreciate that, especially when it comes to, adding the cocoa and using some of those ingredients and stuff in the cocoa. I think that's going to be a great way to mix that in. Now, we got another question which came in, and this one's from my brother, Jeffrey Jackson. Shout out to Jeffrey, another ICANN VIP Bean Club homie, but he's asking about protozoa. Now, this is a little bit more of a, I guess, specificized question, if that's even the word, but he says the role of protozoa in indoor living soil grow. Are there any products available during the winter when local harvesting is not possible? And this links to the following question that I'm going to ask. So I figured I'd start with this one.
So, as far as protozoa, I don't focus so much on trying to cycle biology in the soil. I just focus on implementing biology that are going to produce certain elements, certain compounds.
Okay.
Right? For me, when I'm looking and thinking about biological solutions or biological crop steering, I'm introducing certain microbial consortiums that produce certain metabolites. Those metabolites usually either have some response on the plant or some chemical response on the soil.
Okay.
In the case of like something like trichoderma and bacillus subtilis, right? They produce sidiophores that chelate iron and keep iron in an available form, right? So I'm not so much focused on trying to like cycle the bacteria and stuff. I'm actually trying to promote certain species.
Wow. Okay. Again, that makes so much sense. When you break it down, explain it like that, it makes so much more sense. Because even when I was reading the question, I was like, "This is a good question. I have no fucking idea." But you just made a lot of sense, bro. So shout out to you on that, man. And that kind of links me back to the following question, which I did want to ask, and this is about worm castings and stuff like that. So any information on worm farming or directly adding worms to the grow medium, primarily indoor large pots upwards of like 30 to 50 gallons, and any tips for like a low maintenance or low cost start? He's saying that the use of the worms would basically be for castings either in soil or for teas, but what do you think of that?
So I don't typically use a lot of castings. Like I don't introduce castings typically into my indoor settings, into these modified soil mixes or these potting soils, and I typically don't do compost teas. Now, those things are really great and beneficial in agronomic soils that are usually deficient in carbon and nutrition, and they'll always have a net positive benefit. You can, but they don't so much have that much of a net benefit in these living soil systems that, because they're already so much carbon. You're usually using a third compost to build these things. And so there's so much carbon in there already and so much nutrition typically.
Big fact.
Now, if you're going to put worms in your indoor system, I recommend just starting small and having real small populations and let them kind of naturally don't force it. Don't force it. Let them naturally establish their populations. You don't want to create too much castings in that small area, because what happens is you increase the bulk density of the soil. And if that soil goes hydrophobic, it's harder to rehydrate. And then also, if you end up with a lot of compaction, you're going to have to start adding a lot more mineral calcium amendments to like break that compaction up, just because the bulk density can become overwhelming and that soil can almost turn into like pure castings.
Yeah, that is such a great point, man. Like, wow, again, you broke that down so great. And a lot of people probably overlook that. Cabar Jones says worms regulate themselves. So again, you probably don't want to just toss like 5,000 worms into your grow setup. That may not be the optimal. But like you said, let it establish itself naturally within that environment. Smart.
But see, what I'll see is oftentimes you'll see people who are like I'm feeding the soil, and they'll just constantly be adding in top dressing or meals or scraps because they're like, oh, I'm feeding the worms, but they aren't realizing that every time they're putting something in there that's breaking down in the soil system, they could be adding something. And if they don't know the balance of what they're adding, that balance may become may not be optimized over time. And so something might swing towards, being too high in nitrogen or too low in calcium, or, too much magnesium, or there's too much heavy metals. And so those are things that you have to think about, with the systems too, if you're just, putting a bunch of stuff in there. That's why I kind of do less is more. I usually just do a bare minimum top dress that's based off of kind of what needs to be there. And I just do like mostly, water, microbes, a little bit of humate every once in a while. I try to keep it really, really simple, because that's how I like to run my programs,
Yeah, simplicity is key, man. And I think that's what a lot of home growers are looking for nowadays. And I think that even today's interview with you has helped them to understand how they can, bring that simplicity, but still improve their final product with their, organic grows at home. So, I think we've touched on a lot of different things, man. And I know for a lot of people who are tapped in right now, if they want to get in touch with you, find out what you got going on, and reach out to you or see what products you guys got, where can they do that, dude?
Yeah, so we can be reached on Instagram at rust.brandon or at Bokashi Earthworks. Make sure it's the right account, because there are a lot of imposters, people who will try to scam you. Yes, Rust, RUST.Brandon, BRANDON. Sometimes I'm shadow banned. You might have to spell it completely out. But also, if you email us at customer service at Bokashi Earthworks, we'll get back to you there. And I think that we have that information on our website as well. And also, we have a Patreon that I drop like more content, like grow related, like home grow related, simply because I don't do a lot of that on Instagram because it gets flagged all the time.
Yeah.
And then there's a blog on the website too that's free, and I usually put a lot of really in-depth science information on the blog on the website.
That is awesome, man. And honestly, you've been doing such great things for the community, for the industry. A lot of people have gotten so much information off you, man. And I hope you continue just to be such a great pioneer when it comes to, organic gardening, sustainability, not wasting. And I think that's fantastic, bro. So props to you on that, man. And thanks a lot for taking the time to come and hang out with us, man. On behalf of over 250 people tuning in right now, thousands that watch it afterwards, man. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Again, you guys can reach out anytime. And if you got cultivation questions, I try to get back to everybody.
Hell yeah. That's what's up, man. And Brandon has been such a great guest on here, man. He's dropped so much information on you guys. So definitely hit that like, show some love, let YouTube know we don't want any restrictions, man. Let Instagram know no restrictions, man. Because even Brandon mentioned it, man. We face those problems, and it's something that's not going to go away anytime soon. But we got to do our part, man. But anyway, on behalf of everyone, man, appreciate you guys hanging out with us, man. Don't forget, join up with the ICANN VIP Bean Club. It is popping. And on behalf of Brandon and I, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, fam.
See you guys later.
Most importantly, stay high and stay motherfucking fly, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace, fam.
Finish it.